Hi, I'm Michelle from Bits and Pieces Paper Lab, and today we're going to learn how to make this fun retro TV shaker card. The whole card is a shaker on the front and has a cute little retro saying on the inside. This is a fun project for anybody on your birthday list, and I'm excited to teach you how to make it. Over at Bits and Pieces Paper Lab, I love to make cards with my Cricut. So if you love to make cards as well, be sure and check out my shop where you'll find tons of other card designs. Now we're going to jump into the software and I'm going to show you how to set this up for cutting. And then I'm also going to teach you just a short lesson on how to do contour. So some of the layers on this, I'm going to show you exactly how that's done, where you get kind of that bubble effect on your text. So if you're kind of a newbie, this will be helpful so that you can create your own sentiments. So let's jump into the software and get started. Okay, now that we have got this file uploaded into Cricut Design Space, there's just one thing we need to do before we're ready to cut. The whole file is grouped. This piece right here is actually the card base. And as it's imported, the score line for the card base comes in as a cut line, and if I do this right now, it's just going to cut my card right in half. So we need to change this line to a score line. So I'm going to select the entire thing just by clicking on it so it's grouped. Come up here to the two squares and ungroup it, and that just releases all the pieces separately. And then we're going to pull this little card away, and this is grouped with the score line as well. So I'm going to do the same thing, do ungroup, and then I'm going to click this line. Come up here to the top left under operation and choose score. And now that's turned it to a dashed line, so I can tell that it's indeed changed it to a score line. Now if I send it to cut just like this, it's going to cut the card on one mat and the score line on a completely different mat. They won't be layered where they need to be. So I need to tell Design Space that I want these two, the score line and the card, these two pieces to be cut together. So I'm going to select the whole thing and then come down here on the bottom right and hit attach. So now when it sends these to the mat, it will have the score line exactly where I want it to be. So that's super helpful. I wanted to provide just one tip about using the contour tool. A lot of people like this layered look with the different colors of the bubble. I call them like bubbles for each of the letters, but it's like an offset. So let me show you how to do this. So if we come over here to text and we get a word, you can choose whatever font you want. So let's say I choose something really thin. What would be a thin? Okay, anyways. Just pretend like this is really something that's too thin to cut. This one would probably be okay, but let's pretend like it's something that's way too thin to cut. One of the tips that I have, little sneaky secret tips that I do, is I'll select the text, I'll come up here to offset, and the way this works is if you drag this little bubble, you can do it. This would be an inline, which would be inlining, getting smaller, and this is an outline. So you can see as I drag it, it gets bigger and bigger, the bubble around the word, it gets bigger and bigger. So if this is a font that's too thin to cut, you can actually create a new version of it by just doing a contour that's just slightly bigger than your word. So let's say I'm going to do 0.2. If I pull this away, now I've got something that's able to be cut, but it still looks like that original font. So that's my secret to work with fonts that might be a little bit too thin for cutting, but you just love them. So if I wanted to make more layers on this, I can just do the same thing, come up here to offset. I'm going to make bigger offsets of that. So let's do that. And now I can make an offset of the gray layer. And I can keep going like as many as I want, just clicking the outside layer, choosing offset. As many times as I want, I can layer that up. So that's how you create those little bubble letters. All right, so those are just a few tips working with text and contours and offsets. Let's go ahead and get rid of these so we can get ready to cut our file. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out all my pieces, and I will see you with all of the supplies cut out, ready to assemble. All right, now that we've got all of our pieces cut out, we're ready to start assembling the card. First of all, I just need to apologize. There's a couple of really small pieces in this cut file. First of all, the little, I guess, knobs for the top of the antenna. And then on the inside here, there's an apostrophe. Pay attention to that you don't lose that piece when you pull it off your mat. All right, so let's go ahead and get started assembling. We're going to first work on the TV, and the best way to do this, there's some stuff that goes inside the little TV. So the best way to do this is actually to just kind of lay the top piece down on top so that you have a kind of a visual guide for where things should go. And then this little piece goes inside just like this. So we're going to go ahead and adhere that down. Making sure everything's kind of lined up. I want to make sure everything shows through the window where the shaker, where the acetate's going to be. So that's why I've got these pieces layered here so that I can just kind of keep an eye, make sure I'm doing it right. All right, so that is the first piece. And then we're going to put this little contrasting corner on. And that goes just like that. All right, and then I'm going to layer up my happy birthday. So this is one of our layers with a contrast layer. Now this is why I really love Bearly Art glue, because the fine tip applicator makes it really easy to place glue on even these tiny little die cuts. It has no problem. So you just have to be really careful as you're doing this. I tend to be a kindergarten gluer. Like I'll just get glue everywhere if I'm not careful. So I love the Bearly Art glue because it kind of controls my kindergarten gluing. So now we're going to put this on the backing layer. Now I've chosen some retro colors of cardstock. This is Encore cardstock from 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop. And I thought the color scheme kind of went nicely. But another thing that would be really cool is 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop has this real wood paper. So I think I'm going to make another one with the real wood paper because I think that would look so cool as a TV console. So that will be my next project. I'll have to work on that later. But after I made this, I thought I should have used the wood paper. That would look so cool. So just a fun alternative. Changing out your papers can make such a difference. Okay, so we've got our little happy birthday. And I am going to just use some adhesive dots to kind of I just want to give this a little bit of dimension. So I'm going to use foam adhesive, some thin foam adhesive, and just pop this off the background a little. It'll just kind of help it stand out. And when you get the glitter in there, it'll kind of make it so that the glitter will catch on the edges too, which will be really cool. So we're going to just place that right in the center, making sure everything's within the opening. So now let's work on getting our little knobs and controls on our TV. So there's a couple different things. The first is this little, I don't even really know what you'd call it, but just make sure these are lined up. You'll know because they line up with the exact right edge. So make sure you got them lined up. Place a little bit of glue on this. And layer that up. And then for our knobs, we're going to do the darker orange on the top. And there's these little tiny, I guess they'd be turn knobs. And we're going to stick those onto the smaller piece. We actually had, when I was a little girl, we had a TV that was like a piece of furniture. I am 46 years old, so this is like in the late 70s, early 80s. Our TV was like a piece of furniture, and it had like a wood console around it. I mean, it was like huge, and it's so funny. I still remember that's kind of what inspired these knobs, is because I remember I would sit right up against the TV so that I could change the channel. And I mean, I could probably see the pixels. I was so close to the TV, but yeah. That's where I got the idea for these little knobs, because we had knobs just like this. Okay, so after you've got those assembled, then you're going to put a little bit of dimensional foam underneath each one of these too, just so it looks like a real knob. Place these on, centering them on the little round pieces. All right, and now we're gonna adhere these. Let me get my one I've already made for guidance. So we're just gonna adhere these directly to the little TV console. That piece goes on the bottom, and then your little knobs go above that. That would be cute to make the little knobs out of wood too. All right, and then finally we're going to put our little antenna on, and this just goes right on the top. And then probably the hardest part of the entire project is getting these tiny little, I guess they'd be antenna knobs on. So you just put a tiny little speck of glue on there. And then lay these on. Those pieces are super tiny. And I should have got my tweezers out. Okay. All right, so we've got our TV assembled. Now it's missing the glass right now, so we need to get the glass on it. Now flip your TV over, and then the acrylic gets adhered on the back here. So just kind of turn it around every which way till you figure out exactly how it goes. But it lays on here with a little bit of a lip around the edge. Now this is a shaker card, so we want to make sure this is adhered down really good. It's the glass for our TV. So I'm going to just apply a thin amount of glue, because what happens when you place this acetate down, it tends to smush. It's not porous like regular paper, so it doesn't soak in. It will just kind of smush. So if you have too much glue, it's going to like show through on the front, which won't look good. So you want to be sure and get all the parts adhered, but you want to use just a little bit of glue. So this is where that fine point applicator comes in really handy. You could also probably use a tape runner or something that's not liquid if you're worried about having issues. Okay, so then I'm just going to place it on. So watch like what happens there. When I smush that, it smushes into the center. So that's why you have to be really careful. All right, so we're going to set that aside, let that dry for a second. And we're going to work on the inside of the card. Lately, I've been decorating the insides of my cards, which I think is so fun. So we're going to do this whole little sentiment on the inside of the card. And there's several layers to it. So I'm going to grab those. This is the base piece. And then next would be this little retro. Now you can use foam adhesive. Some people just really like foam adhesive to kind of give layers. Since this is the inside of the card and we already have a shaker, and I do want to be able to mail this, I'm going to skip the foam dots. But if you're hand delivering this, you could add some foam in between the layers to just really make this pop off the card. I'm always very conscious about if I'm mailing a card, I'll sometimes make design decisions a little bit differently than I would if I can just hand it to someone, because I don't want it to get so excessive that it requires a box to mail it. All right, and then we've got a little retro, and I'm going to put my fancy R on. And then this whole piece gets adhered to the inside of the card. So I'm going to very carefully put some adhesive on the back here. Just kind of strategically placing little blobs of glue so that it will stick down without making a mess. And we're going to just center that, line everything up, and press down to kind of get it adhered and situated. And then I'm going to add my tiny little apostrophe right there. And I am going to grab my tweezers for that tiny little piece. Okay, so we've got that done. Now I like to make shakers separate from the card. So you can kind of do shaker cards a couple different ways. You could create it so that it actually is part of the card front, and maybe it would have like a cutout so you could see the inside. That's probably a more advanced technique when you're designing it or making it, because you have to make sure everything's lined up. I like to actually make my shakers so that it's like a separate piece that just gets glued to the front of the card. I think that's easier for beginners, and then you can make sure that everything is really pushed down. The key to a shaker card is just making sure you've got a really good seal on the edge of your shaker. So I find when you do it this way, you can be sure that you're getting a good seal. So we want to create a little, I guess, like a moat for the shaker. And the key is that every single seam of your shaker touches the one next to it. We don't want any gaps for glitter or sequins to get out. So I like to use foam strips for this, and I'll just kind of maneuver them so that they're moving around my corners. It's a little tricky on things that are like a rounded edge. So you just kind of have to do your best placing it down, making sure that all the seams are touching. And okay, so we've got that down. Now before I peel off this backing layer, I'm gonna, with my finger, really good push that down. I wanna make sure that everything is very tightly adhered so I don't have any gaps or leaks. All right, so we're good there. Now it's time to use our shakers. This is one of my favorite hobbies lately, is finding things I can use for shakers. So you'll find like tiny little pearls, seed beads, these clay beads you can use. 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop sells these little pearl kits, and the tiniest little pearls are just the perfect size for it. So I'm going to sprinkle some of those in. You could use sequins, you can use regular glitter. I do find sometimes regular glitter, static cling will keep it stuck to the front of the acetate. So you can kind of decide whether you want to use that or not. But I'm just going to fill up my little shaker. It's a mix of colors. Got some clay beads and some little, these are seed beads. I'm not even sure where I got these. I just happened to have them in my stash. So, all right. Now this next step is tricky. You just have to be very careful. So I put my finger and hold this down. I don't want it to lift or move at all as I'm peeling off my backing. And I'm just going to very carefully peel this off. I don't want to jostle it and knock my beads out of their, I guess it's like a playpen for your shaker stuff. I don't want my beads to get out of their playpen. So I'm going to just be really careful. We're going to very carefully place this onto the back of the TV. So before I push it down at all, I want to make sure everything's really lined up good. Then I will just carefully place it down. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure I've got a really good seal all the way around. Now when I flip it over, I've got a little shakety shaker. So fun. So the final step is just to adhere your little TV to the front of your card, and I'm just going to use quite a bit of adhesive. And get that down, put that right on the front of my card. And now I've got the cutest little card to give to someone for their birthday. And when they get out of the envelope, they can shake it. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you love this project. I can't wait to see all of the different versions you make. And if you love making cards with your Cricut, be sure and check out my shop over at Bits and Pieces Paper Lab.